My wife just confessed that she had a drunken one-night stand with a stranger. So she's begging me for forgiveness, but I feel nothing. So now I'm telling her to have a one-night stand with our divorce papers. I, 32 male, have been married to my wife, Kath, 30 female, for 4 years, and we've been together for 9. Our relationship has been amazing, loving, and supportive. We have good communication, hardly ever argue, and our bedroom life has grown stronger over the years. We've discussed cheating in the past, and I was always clear that if it ever happened, we would be over. Kath went home to visit her family last weekend, which was fairly normal. Before she left on Friday night, we had a minor argument about keeping the house tidy, so our communication was limited. On Saturday, I knew she was going out to meet some friends at a bar, but I trusted her 100%, so I didn't think anything of it. Before I fell asleep, I texted her saying, I hope she had a nice night. When I woke up on Sunday morning, I saw I had a missed call from Kath at 4 o'clock a.m., so I immediately called her to check if she was okay. But there was no answer. After a few hours, I tried calling again a few times, but still no answer. Around an hour later, I got a message saying she was fine and would be driving back soon. Kath got home late in the afternoon and looked awful. She had clearly been crying, wasn't wearing any makeup unusual for her, and looked like a shell of a person. I knew right away something was wrong, but she wouldn't let me hug her and could barely speak. I sat her down on the couch and made her some tea. I gently encouraged her to tell me what was wrong, and she burst into uncontrollable tears for at least 10 minutes while I tried to comfort her. She then proceeded to tell me, pausing every few words, that she had slept with someone the previous night after the bar. At that moment, something in my brain broke. I can't describe it any other way. I immediately got up, jumped in my car, and drove off. I went to a park and walked around for about an hour. Kath was calling my phone constantly, but I turned it off. When I got home, I grabbed 2 suitcases from the garage and went to our bedroom. I threw some of Kath's clothes and shoes into them and left them by the front door. Kath was lying on the floor in the living room, curled up into a ball, sobbing. I called her best friend who lives nearby and told her that Kath needed a place to stay in, a ride to her home, and that Kath could explain everything to her later. I told Kath I was leaving for an hour and that her friend was coming to pick her up. She grabbed onto my legs, trying to stop me from leaving. When I returned home again, Kath was gone and so were the suitcases. On Monday, with a clear head, I answered one of Kath's many calls and told her that I needed her to send me an email with as many details as possible about that night. I warned her that if she left anything out, there would be no hope of reconciliation. I received the email on Monday night, but still haven't opened it. Since then, everyone has been trying to contact me, but I've just been working, exercising, and sleeping. One of her friends showed up at my house with an attitude demanding an explanation. I told her to speak to Kath and close the door in her face. I've also been speaking to divorce lawyers, moved money into separate accounts, and blocked Kath and all of her friends on everything. Everything I've done since finding out feels like it's been on autopilot. I don't feel angry, upset, or overly emotional, just numb. Kath posted a note through the door yesterday asking me to meet her tomorrow, but I'm conflicted. Should I meet her? Will it change anything? Is there any point in trying to reconcile? Is it normal to feel like a robot and numb? And how do I snap out of this? Update 1: after reading your comments, I decided to meet with Kath, but I didn't. Read the email. Kath came to the house yesterday. When I opened the door, she looked terrible. She tried to hug me and started mumbling apologies, but I stopped her and we sat down to talk. I started by telling Kath that I would be recording the conversation, and she agreed. I then asked her to explain what happened, telling her I hadn't read the email she sent. Kath said she had been at the bar with 2 friends I know and liked both of them and told me what she had to drink. I was surprised at how little she had, considering it was the same amount we would normally drink when going out for dinner, a few glasses of wine and a cocktail. She admitted she was only slightly tipsy. One of her friends, Sandra, has a younger brother, Mike, 27 meters, who came to pick them up around midnight. It's a running joke in their group that Mike has had a major crush on Kath since high school, and I had heard them joke about this. The 4 of them went to get some food, and Mike then dropped everyone off until it was just him and Kath. Kath said she didn't want him to drive the 20 minutes to her parents' place after working all day, so she decided to order an Uber from his apartment. She went inside his apartment to order the Uber but couldn't get one. Mike suggested she crash in his bed while he took the sofa, and then he would drop her off in the morning. Kath refused and continued trying to find an Uber. They were sitting on Mike's bed and he kissed her. She kissed him back and they ended up having intimacy. Afterward, she broke down crying from guilt and Mike took her home. She cried for another hour and then tried to call me to confess what she had done. We had to pause the conversation multiple times because Kath kept breaking down and crying hysterically. She told me it was a huge mistake. She got caught up in the moment and that it was terrible. She kept insisting she only loves me, etc. After she was done, I told her that her story didn't make sense. But it didn't matter at this point because I was done. This caused another breakdown. I told her I was continuing with the divorce preparations, but for the next month, we would remain separated with no contact. I also told her we would both remain faithful, get full STD panels, and that she would tell our mutual friends and family what happened. If she stuck to these conditions, I would be willing to meet again to explore any possibility of moving forward other than divorce. She agreed to this enthusiastically, but made it clear that she didn't expect me to remain faithful to her. I know many of you will criticize this decision, but I need to be sure that divorce is the right choice. After I've had time to process everything that has happened, I'm still 99% sure that's where we're heading. But I need to be 100% certain. Update 2. A few things have happened in the last week, so I thought I'd make an update if anyone is interested. First of all, I'm no longer in robot mode. I've been having intense bursts of anger and betrayal, but I've been keeping busy with work and exercise. My friends have been great since they found out and have been dragging me out of the house to hang out. I decided to read the email, and I wish I hadn't. The story Kath told in the email was mostly the same. There was no mention of going into Mike's apartment to order an Uber. There were also some pretty explicit details of what they did for how long, and that they had apparently used a condom. I will never be able to forget this description. Many of the people who originally criticized me for kicking Kath out of the house have now apologized. But I don't care. Kath's parents reached out to apologize, and I spoke to them. Since we had a good relationship before all of this, they begged me to try to work things out, but said they'd understand if I decided to get divorced. I didn't commit to either option. Kath's other friend who was there that night contacted me to tell me her side of the story. It mostly matched up. Bar, food, home. She said Kath could have stayed over at her house, but she refused, saying she was driving home early the next morning. Mike apparently insisted on taking Kath home. The version of the story she told didn't mention Kath trying to get an Uber, just that Mike invited her in, and she accepted. I asked if she ever suspected anything before, and she told me that about a year ago. She went to meet Kath for coffee and found Mike sitting with her when she arrived. Apparently, Kath looked guilty, but when asked, she said they just met by chance. Sandra, Mike's sister, also reached out to me and I spoke to her as well. She was angry with both Mike and Kath and told me a similar story. Apparently, her whole family is angry with Mike, and she hasn't spoken to Kath since she found out. She apologized on behalf of her idiot brother and said she had warned him to stay away from Kath since high school. She didn't think anything else had happened between them. I've had zero contact from Kath, but I heard she was moving into an Airbnb near our house. Apparently, she is not coping well and called in sick from work a few times over the last few weeks. She does have support from the friend she's currently living with, and I've asked her parents to keep an eye on her. Her parents came up to see her this past weekend. I went out with some friends this weekend and ended up drunk at a bar. I was talking to a girl there who I probably could have gone home with, but I stopped myself because I wanted to keep my self-respect. Reading the email and hearing what they did made me give up hope of repairing this. Especially since I know Kath is not being truthful about other things. So who knows? I will be moving ahead with a divorce and might not even wait a month before telling Kath that this is my final decision. Update 3. I debated posting this update, but a lot of people seem invested in this situation, so here it is. Apologies in advance if this is too much information. Kath sent me an email last week asking to pick up some things she needed for work. My lawyer advised me not to prevent her from accessing the house or her possessions, so I reluctantly agreed. She could come over on Thursday night while I was at the gym. I told her to be out by 7:30, but when I got home at 8, she was still there. When I walked in, she had left a few work-related items next to the stairs and was chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked amazing with her hair and makeup done, wearing one of the dresses I like. The whole place had been tidied and cleaned. I calmly asked her to leave immediately, and she made her way to the door, but stopped and asked if we could talk. I should have said no, but I eventually agreed. We sat down and had a conversation for about an hour, jumping from topic to topic. I told her I would record the audio again, and she agreed. I started by asking if she had kept her side of the agreement we made the last time we spoke. She said she had taken an STI test, which was all negative. Mine was too, thankfully, and a pregnancy test, which was also negative. She said she hadn't been with anyone else and had told a few friends and family what happened. Many of them were angry and weren't speaking to her. Asked a lot of questions that have been on my mind for the last few weeks. She confirmed her reason for going into Mike's apartment. The Uber story was BS. She admitted he invited her in for a drink, and she agreed, knowing at some level that something was going to happen. She couldn't explain why she did this other than being selfish and enjoying the attention. She also confirmed she had texted with Mike a few times over the years because he showered her with compliments and made her feel good. He would always initiate, and she claimed she was careful not to lead him on, saying she had never sent him explicit messages or pictures. Kath also told me they had hooked up about 6 months before we got together, but never had intimacy. She admitted she was always a bit curious. Her story about being caught at the coffee shop was that Mike had texted her asking what she was up to, and she had told him where she was. He then showed up. She swore this was the first time anything had happened since we had been together. She said there was nothing missing in our relationship, and that she hates herself for ruining her perfect marriage and causing me so much pain. I told her I still didn't believe her story and that there was no point in continuing the conversation. She calmly asked what she could do to make things right, offering up her phone location, sharing, not going out without me. She had clearly done some research. I told her I had no plans to become her prison guard, especially since I would never get over the betrayal. Things then took an unexpected turn, catching me completely off guard. She asked me to turn off the audio recording because she had something private to discuss and didn't want others hearing it. I refused, and she reluctantly continued. She asked if I had been with anyone else intimately since all of this happened, making it clear she would be fine with it. I told her no, and she said I must be going crazy. We used to have intimacy almost daily and started talking provocatively about things I could do with and to her. This included a lot of things I'd wanted to try or had only done a few times. She said she wanted to meet my needs even if we didn't get back together. She offered as many three-person wrestles as I wanted from now on, or we could have an open relationship on my side only, and she would even find partners for us, or me. She was trying very hard to get me excited, and I stayed silent until she asked who I wanted a third with. For some reason, I mentioned her coworker, who is 5 years younger than Kath and a total knockout. This surprised her, but she was in too deep and asked what I wanted to do with her. I described a pretty detailed scenario, and Kath encouraged me until I said she would just be watching. This caught her off guard, but she went along with it. Later, I realized I only said all of this out of a petty attempt to hurt Kath, which I don't feel good about. She was convinced her plan was working, so she pulled up her dress and got into my favorite position on the couch, begging me to have intimacy with her. I'll admit, for a few seconds, my body reacted even though my head wasn't in it. Everything suddenly came into focus, and the content of her email flooded back into my mind. I can't explain why, but I started to laugh. Not just a chuckle, but full-on belly laughter. She looked hurt, moved away, and started to cry. I told her it was time to go, and she left quickly, probably out of embarrassment. I also told her she needed to hurry up and lawyer up because we were getting divorced. The post-nut clarity after she left confirmed that I had dodged a bullet. I have a meeting with my lawyer later this week and want to move forward with the divorce as quickly as possible. Update 4, I thought I would provide a final update on the situation for anyone who is interested. The last few months have been tough, and I've only seen Kath in person a handful of times. After a few weeks of no contact, I decided we should discuss things with clear heads. We went for lunch and had a calm, respectful conversation about everything that happened and what reconciliation might look like. Kath said she would do anything to get things back on track, and I believe her, but I didn't commit to anything. Afterward, Kath asked me to go with her to see her therapist, who is also experienced in dealing with married couples. I thought about it for a few days before agreeing. The session was tough with a lot of tears, but I didn't get a straight answer on why Kath cheated. The therapist was surprisingly fair to both of us and wasn't judgmental. We again discussed reconciliation, but I told Kath I thought it was best to proceed with the divorce. Last week, I drove to her parents' house to drop off some tools I had borrowed from her dad. We had arranged for Kath to be there and for her parents to go out for a few hours. We could talk. I spoke with her parents alone, who were heartbroken, which was hard, but they were both very supportive. During the conversation with Kath, I told her clearly that I'd given it a lot of thought, but I wanted to move ahead with the divorce. It came down to the fact that I don't believe we could ever get back to where we were, and I realistically can't see myself ever getting over the betrayal. Even if we could regain trust, it could take a decade of hard work, and that is too big of a risk for me. Kath finally accepted this, and we had a calm discussion about how we would divide assets, sell the house, etc., and we wrote an email to our respective lawyers. We left each other on good terms. The divorce should be finalized by the end of the year, and the house will be put up for sale soon. In the meantime, we will go no contact and have agreed not to start dating until everything is finalized. I've had a few casual hookups, and it feels strange to be single again. After all this time, I've been hitting the gym, spending a lot of time with friends and family, and getting back into my hobbies. I'm optimistic about the future, and although I'm still devastated by the loss of my marriage, I feel this has helped me grow as a person thanks to those who offered advice and support.